past week, we've heard lots about the return of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to the UK. Now there's speculation their move could be short-lived, and talk that Meghan's possible casting in Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman.
Harry and Meghan's UK return turned into a nightmare when a massive crowd drowned out their arrival with furious boos and forced the Duke and Duchess of Sussex off a London street. Harry stepped from the vehicle, expecting a carefully managed welcome, but his face tightened as chants of "Go home" thundered behind the barriers. Meghan reached for his arm, her confident smile disappearing as security officers closed around them and hurried them back toward the car. The couple had returned hoping to repair their damaged relationship with Britain, but someone had leaked their private route and placed them directly before the hostile crowd. Who wanted Harry and Meghan's UK return to end in humiliation? Why had they ignored a warning delivered hours earlier? And what did Harry discover moments after the massive crowd booed them off the street that made him believe this nightmare had been arranged from inside? The first roar struck before Harry's car had stopped. It was not applause. Behind the steel barriers lining a London street, hundreds of voices rose together. "Go home!" Boos shook the tinted windows. Meghan's smile vanished. Harry stared ahead, tightening his hand around hers as their security chief, Daniel Foster, spoke into his radio. Their return had been planned as a quiet act of reconciliation. 3 weeks earlier, Harry had received a private invitation from the Havenbridge Foundation, a veterans' charity he had supported before leaving Britain. Its director, Eleanor Grant, wanted him to open a new rehabilitation center and believed Meghan's presence would signal unity. The couple agreed, but only after organizers promised a controlled entrance, screened guests, and no public walkabout. Yet their arrival time and route had appeared online that morning. Inside the vehicle, Meghan asked who had leaked it. Daniel had no answer. He only warned that the crowd contained supporters, reporters, veterans, and organized protesters holding placards accusing the couple of profiting from royal grievances. Harry looked wounded by one sign bearing a photograph of his late mother beside the words, "Stop using her pain." For a moment, the noise softened. Near the entrance stood a group carrying flowers, and Meghan drew a breath, believing they had found safe ground. Then, an elderly woman stepped forward, raised a bouquet, and called Harry's name. He opened the door, despite Daniel's warning. The woman's voice trembled. "Your mother taught us compassion. Why did you turn every family wound into entertainment?" Cameras surged. Harry froze. Meghan reached for his arm, but another chant erupted from behind them. Police officers closed ranks as a paper cup struck the road beside Meghan's shoe. No one was injured, yet the security team immediately ordered retreat. As they were pushed back toward the car, Harry heard Eleanor shouting that the ceremony had been cancelled. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. He read the message twice, his face draining of color. The leaked route had not come from a protest group. It had been sent from an email account registered to someone inside the Havenbridge Foundation, someone who had attended every secret planning meeting and knew exactly where Harry and Meghan would be deliberately exposed. 20 minutes later, their convoy disappeared beneath the guarded underground entrance of a private Mayfair residence. The penthouse above them had marble floors, private lifts, discreet staff, and windows overlooking some of London's most expensive streets. Harry and Meghan possessed the wealth to cross oceans privately, employ elite security, and retreat behind locked doors, but none of it could purchase the welcome they had expected. Harry remained a prince by birth and the Duke of Sussex by title, raised inside palaces where every entrance had once been controlled. Yet beneath the tailored suit stood the same wounded boy who had walked behind his mother's coffin while millions watched. The sign in the crowd had reopened that memory. For several seconds, he could still hear the slow bells, the horses' hooves, and the terrible instruction given to him as a child: keep walking. Meghan had built her life differently. Long before royal residences and international headlines, she had been an ambitious actress, learning to survive rejection and scrutiny. Marriage had transformed her into the Duchess of Sussex, and successful media ventures had brought influence and luxury, but public judgment followed her into every room. She had trained herself to smile through hostility, This time, the smile had failed. "They knew exactly where I would step out," she said, removing her coat with trembling hands. "That wasn't chance." "No," Daniel replied. "The anger was genuine, but the confrontation was engineered." Daniel Foster, a former police protection officer, had guarded diplomats and wealthy families for nearly 2 decades. His calmness came from experience, but that morning he had received an anonymous message advising him to use the building's western entrance. Eleanor had insisted the eastern route was secure, so he had dismissed the warning as interference. Now that decision haunted him. Eleanor arrived under escort, her face pale. The daughter of a decorated army medic, she had spent 15 years building Havenbridge, but rising construction costs had pushed the new center close to collapse. "There's something I didn't tell you," she confessed. "An anonymous donor promised enough money to save the center, but only if both of you appeared together." Harry's anger sharpened. "You accepted money without identifying the donor?" "I thought I was saving wounded veterans." Daniel opened the leaked email's access record. 4 senior employees knew the password, but the file had been opened from a device that did not belong to any of them. Then Meghan noticed the timestamp. The route had been downloaded while Eleanor and all 4 employees were sitting with Harry and Meghan inside the same locked planning room. Silence settled over the penthouse, but it offered no comfort. Beyond the windows, television vans were already gathering beneath the building, broadcasting the humiliation across Britain. Every channel replayed the same few seconds. Meghan's disappearing smile, Harry's frozen expression, the police line tightening, and the massive crowd booing them off the street. Meghan placed her phone face down, but not before seeing a headline describing their UK return as a catastrophic miscalculation. "We came here to show people we could still serve," Harry said. "Now they'll say we came looking for attention." "They would have said that regardless," Meghan replied, although her voice lacked its usual certainty. "The difference is that someone made sure they had pictures to support it." Harry moved toward the window. Wealth had given them choices unavailable to most people: a secluded California estate, private advisors, international business partnerships, and the means to leave Britain that night. Yet he remained emotionally tied to the country outside. Its streets held his childhood, his military pride, his mother's memory, and the family relationships he had never fully repaired. For Meghan, the danger felt different. She had entered royal life expecting discipline and sacrifice, but she had never anticipated becoming a symbol strangers could love or despise without knowing her. The roar of the crowd had dragged her back to lonely nights, when she had read thousands of cruel messages while holding her infant son. She had promised herself that no public appearance would ever make her feel that powerless again. "We should leave," she said quietly. Harry turned. "If we leave now, whoever arranged this wins. And if we stay, they get another opportunity." Before he could answer, Daniel approached with a tablet. He had contacted Thomas Hale, the former Royal Marine who had organized the largest protest group outside Havenbridge. Hale's name was familiar to Harry. Years earlier, the prince had presented him with a service award after a roadside explosion ended his military career. A photograph from that ceremony still stood in Hale's modest Manchester home. "Put him through," Harry said. Thomas appeared on the screen with a scar crossing his left temple. His anger was visible, but so was his discomfort. "I came to protest," Thomas said. "I won't pretend otherwise. My brother waited 11 months for trauma treatment before taking his own life. When Havenbridge announced that expensive ceremony, some veterans believed we were being used as scenery." Harry absorbed the words without interrupting. "But I did not leak your route," Thomas continued. "And I warned your security officer because something was wrong." Daniel leaned closer. "What did you see?" "2 coaches arrived before dawn, carrying people none of us recognized. Someone gave them matching placards, megaphones, and instructions about where to stand. They kept pushing genuine protesters toward the eastern entrance. Then, minutes before you arrived, the organizers disappeared." The revelation changed the room. The crowd's resentment had been real, but someone had concentrated it at the exact point where Harry and Meghan would leave their vehicle. No actors had been required. The architect of the nightmare had simply found wounded people, sharpened their anger, and placed cameras around them. "Why help us now?" Meghan asked. Thomas hesitated. "Because protest is not an ambush. Your mother once visited my unit without photographers. She listened when nobody important wanted to listen. I disagreed with you today, Harry, but I won't let someone use veterans to destroy her son." Harry lowered his eyes. For the first time since leaving the street, the anger inside him gave way to grief. "Thank you, Thomas," he whispered. After the call, Daniel examined the Foundation's access records. The route had been downloaded remotely through a cloned login, while everyone attended the locked planning meeting. The intruder had then forwarded it to an address almost identical to that of Olivia Bennet, Harry and Meghan's British communications strategist. One letter had been changed. Olivia had urged the couple to make the UK return, arguing that continued absence allowed critics to define them. Raised above her parents' struggling shop in Leeds, she had built an elite reputation management company from nothing, and now advised politicians, athletes, and wealthy families. Success had earned her a townhouse, influential clients, and access to private rooms, but also rivals who understood that one scandal could destroy everything she had built. "This address was designed to implicate Olivia," Daniel said. "Someone wants us investigating the wrong person." Eleanor suddenly gripped the back of a chair. "The anonymous donation," she said. "It came with a handwritten letter delivered by courier. I kept the envelope. Security retrieved it from her office. Inside the flap was a tiny embossed symbol, a silver crown divided by a black line. Neither Eleanor nor Daniel recognized it. Then Thomas sent a photograph taken outside Havenbridge. The image showed a man in a fluorescent jacket distributing placards to the arriving coach passengers. His face was partly turned from the camera, but Eleanor recognized him immediately. "That's impossible," she breathed. It was the same courier who had delivered the anonymous donor's letter, and according to Havenbridge's security records, he had entered its offices 3 separate times, using a visitor pass authorized under Eleanor's name. Daniel enlarged the courier's photograph until the man's blurred face filled the screen. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then his controlled expression fractured. "I know him." Harry stepped closer. "Who is he?" "Matthew Crane. He worked under me. Years earlier, Crane had been one of Daniel's most trusted protection officers. He could study a building once and remember every exit, camera, and blind corner. Raised by a military father who treated weakness as disgrace, Crane had learned to hide emotion behind discipline. That skill made him valuable to wealthy clients, but his hunger for money eventually outweighed his loyalty. Daniel had dismissed him after discovering that a celebrity client's movements had been sold to photographers. No criminal charge followed because the evidence was circumstantial, but Daniel had personally ensured Crane never worked in licensed protection again. "You knew someone capable of this and never warned us?" Meghan asked. "I believed he had left Britain," Daniel replied. 2 years ago, he disappeared after an investor accused him of corporate surveillance. Harry's voice hardened. "People like him don't disappear. They find richer employers." Daniel searched old security records while Eleanor contacted Havenbridge's building manager. The 3 visitor passes had been approved using her electronic signature, copied from the anonymous donor agreement. During his first visit, Crane had delivered the letter. During his second, he had toured the unfinished rehabilitation wing. During his third, he had been left alone for 4 minutes beside the communications office. 4 minutes had been enough. Technicians discovered a remote access device concealed behind the office router. It had captured a senior employee's password, allowing Crane to enter Havenbridge's network from anywhere. He had deliberately downloaded the route during the locked planning meeting so that suspicion would fall upon someone inside the room. The false address resembling Olivia Bennet's had been another manufactured trail. "This was never just about leaking our location," Meghan said. "He wanted us to distrust everyone around us." "And we nearly did," Harry admitted. By evening, the booze had become the defining image of their UK return. Commentators debated whether the couple had misjudged public feeling. Supporters called the scene cruel. Critics called it deserved. Between both sides, the truth disappeared beneath anger. Then Thomas Hale sent Harry a private message. Several injured veterans who had traveled to attend the cancelled ceremony were still waiting inside a temporary treatment facility behind Havenbridge. They had refused interviews and asked for no publicity. They only wanted to know whether Harry still intended to meet them. Daniel opposed the visit. Meghan feared another trap, but Harry remembered the years he had spent in uniform, when rank mattered less than whether the person beside him could be trusted. Military service had given him an identity beyond palace walls. Turning away now would make the ambush more powerful than the reason he had returned. "We go quietly," Harry decided. No announcement, no cameras. A service entrance brought them into the facility after dark. There were no cheering crowds, expensive decorations, or polished speeches. Only veterans learning to walk with artificial limbs, families carrying exhaustion behind brave smiles, and counselors working in cramped rooms. A young former medic named James Carter struggled to rise when Harry entered. "Don't," Harry said, kneeling beside him. "You've done enough standing for other people." James laughed, but his mother covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Meghan sat beside her and listened as she described the night her son called from a hospital, terrified that his injuries had destroyed his future. For nearly an hour, Harry and Meghan spoke with everyone. Wealth, titles, and public battles faded inside that room. When Thomas arrived, he and Harry faced each other awkwardly. "I meant what I said outside," Thomas admitted. "I'm angry." "You had reason to be," Harry replied. "But I wish you had spoken to me before someone weaponized that anger." Thomas extended his hand. "Then listen now." Harry took it. The quiet meeting could have begun repairing the damage, but Crane had anticipated that possibility. As the couple prepared to leave, every phone in the room vibrated simultaneously. A short audio clip had appeared online. Meghan's voice could be heard saying, "Those people outside understand nothing. Their anger is useful only to whoever controls it." The sentence sounded merciless, but Meghan recognized it immediately. During the locked planning meeting, she had said those words about online agitators exploiting veterans. Crane had removed the surrounding explanation, making it sound as if she had insulted the protesters themselves. "They'll believe it," Meghan whispered. "After what happened today, they'll believe every word." Daniel's phone rang from an unknown number. Crane's voice emerged calmly through the speaker. "Tomorrow at noon, Harry will stand before the cameras and read a statement accusing the royal household of arranging the ambush. If he refuses, I release the remaining recordings, edited one by one, until Britain despises both of you." "You want a war inside my family," Harry said. "No," Crane replied. "Someone far wealthier than you has already paid for one." The call ended. Seconds later, Daniel received an address and a photograph of Crane entering a private club beside a silver-haired man wearing the divided crown emblem. Eleanor recognized him from the donor agreement. He was not merely Crane's employer. He was the anonymous benefactor who had financed Havenbridge, transported the hostile crowd, and designed Harry and Meghan's nightmare from the beginning. The silver-haired man was Sir Adrian Vale, the billionaire founder of Vale Meridian, a powerful data analysis and digital media empire. Its divided crown emblem appeared on private clubs, charitable trusts, and confidential strategy documents, but rarely before the public. Vale owned luxurious properties across Britain, traveled with personal security, and controlled a network of news platforms capable of turning controversy into millions of views within hours. Yet his obsession with veterans had begun in grief, not business. Vale had grown up above a Newcastle repair shop with a widowed mother who counted every coin before buying food. Scholarships and relentless ambition carried him into technology, where he built software that predicted consumer behavior. By 60, he possessed more money than his childhood self could have imagined. His only son, Jonathan, rejected corporate privilege and joined the army. Jonathan returned from deployment, carrying injuries no one could see. He struggled with sleeplessness, guilt, and sudden terror, but repeated delays prevented him from receiving consistent treatment. After Jonathan took his own life, Vale blamed charities, politicians and royal patrons who publicly praised veterans while wounded soldiers waited for help. He initially donated quietly. However, grief hardened into resentment. When Harry left royal duties but continued speaking about service, Vale became convinced that the prince had abandoned the institution while keeping its emotional influence. Harry's public criticism of his family intensified that belief. But revenge alone did not finance the ambush. Vale Meridian was preparing to launch a subscription platform built around national identity and royal controversy. Internal projections showed that a direct conflict between Harry and the royal household could attract hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Vale therefore needed Harry in Britain, publicly humiliated and angry enough to accuse his family. Eleanor finally remembered where she had seen him. During the donation negotiations, Vale had joined one encrypted video call using the false name Mr. Arden. He had kept his camera dim, but the silver hair and divided crown cufflinks were unmistakable. He asked repeatedly whether both Harry and Meghan would attend, she told Daniel. I thought he wanted maximum publicity for his donation. He wanted maximum pressure, Meghan replied. Before dawn, the evidence grew stronger. Thomas's photograph circulated among veterans, and Clara Finch, Vale Meridian's former compliance director, recognized Crane and the divided crown symbol. She contacted police because she had resigned weeks earlier after questioning unexplained invoices labeled Havenbridge Audience Activation. During a lawful internal audit, Clara had retained copies of documents she was required to report to regulators. They included payments for 2 coaches, hundreds of matching placards, temporary crowd coordinators, and several transfers to Matthew Crane. One schedule contained 2 chilling phrases: Phase 1, public rejection, and Phase 2, palace accusation. The anonymous Havenbridge donation, the forged visitor passes, the remote access device, the manipulated recording, and Crane's blackmail call now formed one continuous chain. Police could act against Crane for the hacking and threats, but building a financial case against Vale would take longer. At 11 the next morning, another massive crowd filled the street outside Havenbridge. Some carried supportive messages, but many of the same protesters had returned. The boos began the moment Harry and Meghan's vehicle appeared. Meghan looked through the tinted glass. "We can still leave." Harry heard his mother's voice in a distant memory, telling him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else mattered more. "If we leave again," he said, "Crane controls the final picture." Daniel opened the door. The noise struck them, but this time Harry and Meghan did not attempt a walkabout. Protected by police, they moved directly to a small platform outside the rehabilitation center. Crane expected Harry to read the statement accusing the royal household. Instead, Harry placed the prepared pages aside. "Yesterday, a massive crowd booed my wife and me off this street," he began. "Some people were brought here and deliberately positioned, but many came because their anger was genuine. I may disagree with how that anger was expressed, but I will not pretend it came from nowhere." The shouting weakened. Harry spoke about Thomas's brother, the treatment delays, and veterans who felt forgotten, while wealthy patrons attended polished ceremonies. "I returned expecting to be heard," he continued, "but I should also have returned prepared to listen." Meghan then played the complete recording from the planning meeting. Her original sentence was heard in context. She had warned that online agitators considered veterans' anger useful only when they could control it. The cruel insult spreading across social media had been manufactured by removing the sentences before and after it. Thomas stepped beside the platform. "I protested them yesterday," he announced. "I still have questions for them today. But our grief was organized, concentrated, and sold back to the country as entertainment. No veteran should accept being used that way." Inside a surveillance van 2 streets away, Crane attempted to release the remaining edited recordings. Police officers arrested him before the upload completed. The evidence recovered from his devices would later connect the operation directly to Vale Meridian's payments and strategy files. Vale denied authorizing illegal acts, claiming that Crane had exceeded his instructions. However, Clara's documents triggered financial and regulatory investigations into his company. Havenbridge returned the unused donation, and Eleanor opened its accounts to independent review. The rehabilitation center survived after thousands of ordinary people contributed smaller amounts, refusing to let one wealthy man own its future. The revelation did not transform every critic into a supporter. Some people continued booing, others applauded. Many simply watched, uncertain but listening. The elderly woman who had confronted Harry the previous day approached again. Her name was Rose Whitmore, the widow of a naval officer who had died after years of untreated trauma. She carried the same bouquet, now bruised from the earlier chaos. "I still believe you exposed family wounds that should have remained private," she told him. Harry nodded. "And I still believe silence can protect the wrong people. But perhaps I spoke so much that I stopped hearing people like you." Rose studied him, then removed one surviving white flower and placed it in his hand. "That is not forgiveness," she said. "It is an invitation to do better." Meghan's eyes filled with tears. Harry held the flower as they entered Havenbridge, beside Thomas, Rose, and the waiting veterans. Their UK return had become the nightmare promised by every warning they had ignored. A massive crowd had booed Harry and Meghan off the street. Their humiliation had traveled around the world, and their marriage, reputation, and family ties had nearly been turned into weapons. But the darkest revelation was not that Britain contained anger toward them. It was that one powerful man had discovered how easily genuine pain could be purchased, positioned, and manipulated, and how close Harry had come to accusing his own family for a nightmare someone else had designed.